Welcome to our Bulletproof and Microsoft co-hosted session, Protect Your Data with a Comprehensive Cybersecurity Strategy. So my name is Christopher Sim, Senior Vice President of our Professional Services Group here at Bulletproof, overseeing our strategic approach and our consulting practices as we go to market to help our customers achieve their business objectives. And today I'm here with my colleague.
Hi there, I'm Sean Hughes. I'm the Director of Information Management here at Bulletproof. We take care of everything that is compliance and privacy related, along with collaboration and business process automation.
Thank you, Sean. So on our agenda today, we'll be uncovering and discovering our data and cybersecurity landscape that is within all of our reaches, the data security risks to consider, leveraging tools for better protection, and methods to future-proof your business and organization. So with the era of data and AI, we are understanding that there's a big explosion within the realm of our data, the sprawl of data, and the rapidness to be able to start leveraging tools to help provide assistance within the business objectives that we have within our reach. So we've leveraged a Copilot as well as a Microsoft Designer tool to put this image just to kind of highlight where we position ourselves from a leader, as well as driving the components and our configurations within our landscape, as well as where you should be leveraging machines as your assistant or co-pilot in that aspect. But we need to also be aware that the data that we are protecting and the jewels of our enterprises is that as we expose and as we look to put certain configurations in place, that we are then at the risks of threat actors being able to also reach out and obtain these pieces of information from our landscapes. And with now the growth of AI and large language models, we are seeing that attackers are also using AI in their offensive approaches, and us as defenders should be also using AI to make sure we are maintaining a safe and balanced approach within our landscape. So are you aware that now we're trying to make sure we can together within our landscape put together a naming taxonomy about the threat actors that are positioning themselves to breach our data and get a foothold of our assets to bring down our business operations. So we intend to bring more clarity to the customers within our organizations, as well as the overall security researchers that are working together to provide defenses across the industry. So with these naming conventions and taxonomy components, right, we want to make sure that we can better articulate, easier to reference and organize how we can protect ourselves and be aware of how threat actors are overwhelming the threat intelligence, and just be more aware of whether they're nation state actors, financially motivated, influence motivated, or just up and coming groups that are putting a strain to them, the data components that are within our fingertips. Now, from an exfiltration piece, this is the biggest area that we're finding that hackers want from all of our organizations. And from a recent Microsoft study, we've found that 16% of the successfully human-operated ransomware attacks involve both encryption and data exfiltration. So even with these numbers from 2022 going into 2023 and us being in 2024 now, these numbers are expected to be doubled by the end of this year. And with now the latest in cybercrime, and we're seeing the amount of revenue that has been generated from this industry, it's almost safe to say that cybercrime is not going to stop, and we still need to put up our defense pillars to be able to overcome these particular threat actors that are infiltrating our environments. And just based on a 2023 study of $8 trillion worth of annual GDP, and with the latest study, that number is expected to hit around 10 trillion. Even though it pays to be in cybercrime, we as a community are looking to still put together our defenses and a call to action to make it more difficult for attackers to infiltrate our defenses and our businesses. So together we want to work as a blue team, and we want to continue to share our insights with the community here. So are you protected, and are you aware and approaching your data within across your business landscape? And are you aware of these top 8 common areas that are putting us at risk, right? And are we looking to find the right ways to leverage the tools and our people and our skill sets and our processes to overcome these areas, whether it be from a social engineering perspective, where somebody's tricking an employee to giving up information they're not supposed to, from legacy systems not being patched, to insider threats, where something can come from an inside the organization, whether it's unintentional or accidental. We have to be aware of these many moving components that can impact us, from human error, malware, to even then a device perspective of unmanaged IoT devices, where it can then provide another layer of entry, whether it's to your supply chain, your manufacturing operations, or even external access points. Anything that's connected to the internet is at risk within the landscape here. And as we get into some solutions and tools, again, just another factual number around, sometimes there's way too many solutions that are not and have not been matured yet within enterprise and larger SMB organizations, where if there's too many security tools, too many compliance tools, and not enough maturity around making sure the tools are configured right to provide either the data, the reporting, the detection, the response that is needed, we need to find a better way to come together to find a solution here. So as we look at coming together and understanding how the workforce model has changed, with data sprawling from our end users being connected anywhere in the world now, the hybrid workforce model is essentially here to stay. And when we look to understand where we can then protect our data, this is where, from a bulletproof perspective, we've landed at the Microsoft Purview solution set, right? So from a comprehensive suite, we have security and compliance tools bundled into one to protect organizations of all sizes. And at the core, there are the security workloads from the Defender XDR, which provide a lot of the detection, prevention, and response capabilities, but also from a privacy and AI responsible perspective, this is all being integrated and bundled into the suite, where then we can focus at the 3 layers here of data security, data governance, and your risk and compliance posture, to then be able to ensure that your organization is taking advantage of classification, data protection, anywhere your data is living within your landscape. And as we want to dive in a little bit deeper, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Sean, who's going to be able to take you through his journey of in the field experience.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. So over the last few years, we've slowly seen compliance tools come more to the fore as extra layers in this security story. The realization that hacking and breaches are more common, and an acknowledgement of insider threats, means that the idea that you can protect your data, even when it travels, along with intelligent monitoring of behaviors, has some real obvious benefits. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the issues, extend a little bit about what Chris was talking about. So let's think about some of the issues we face. We have a very complex environment in IT nowadays, a lot to protect. And they're designed for collaboration, for openness, for sharing, which is great for business and productivity, but does provide some real challenges. And related to that, we have this explosion in content that has been happening for a long time, and it's only getting faster. It's a big bang of content creation, if you like. Some of the challenges we face include not knowing where the content is stored. I'm sure you're all aware of the duplication problem and people retaining copies in their OneDrives and in SharePoint sites and in mailboxes. So the content is stored in many, many places. And then also retention of a lot of old content, that hoarding mentality that we see. Potentially keeping content that doesn't really need to exist. We also have complex permissions, massive oversharing in systems where people are collaborating. So some of the downstream issues can be inefficiency in decision making if you can't find the content you need in a quick and timely manner, not being able to meet regulatory challenges or policy obligations, and of course the increased impact if a breach or a data leak occurs, and that can be either from external or internal actors. Now, all of these challenges impact the organization and all organizations of all types and all sizes. And I'm going to add one more issue to the ever-increasing pile of challenges that we face, AI tools such as Copilot. These tools have the potential to be incredibly helpful. They're very powerful tools, but they really depend on the information that they see, just like real people. They can magnify the knowledge and the benefits, but also magnify the trash as well. So the old IT adage of garbage in, garbage out, that will definitely be the case with AI. It will also highlight a lot of those permissions issues as well. So I think it's pretty easy for us to kind of talk about and state the issues. You've heard quite a few there. And I'm sure if we open the floor to everyone here, there will be many other headaches that we could list. But I think we kind of get the picture of what we're dealing with in a modern IT environment. So what we're here to talk about are some of the steps we can take to mitigate these risks. So imagine, if you will, if we could take the following steps. What if we could identify all of the sensitive data that exists and know where it exists, know where all the multiple copies are of that sensitive material? What if we could classify data? We could do this automatically or through suggestions and prompts or just manually through users to match your organizational classification policy. What if we could monitor and report on the flow of that data, automatically block certain activities where we know they're going against policy and work with users to triage the rest? And wouldn't it be great if we could identify when a user has done something unusual, like download 100 files and pop them onto a USB drive, and then based on that increase of risk, change the rules that maybe apply to that user? Now, all of this sounds great, but on top of that, what if we could also clean up the old data and at the same time prevent important records from being manipulated, updated, or deleted? These are some of the things that Microsoft Purview can do for you. And it isn't everything. It can also help with other parts of the puzzle, such as data governance tools for your structured data. Purview can look at your databases and identify sensitive data stored in those as well. And also things like e-discovery. We could spend a whole session on e-discovery. That tool is very powerful and effective. And if you're in a role that is responsible for that kind of activity, it's incredibly useful. But what we're going to focus on here are those extra layers of security protection. So let's take detection first. Inbuilt into Microsoft Purview are a whole range of sensitive information types and trainable classifiers. These tools, which are already populated with a range of values and settings, basically tell the system what sensitive data looks like. So what a passport number looks like, what a health card number looks like, something like that. And you can use those out-of-the-box classifiers, and you can modify them and refine them to make them your own, or you can actually create your own identifiers as well. If you have unique information in your organization, which I'm sure you do, you can create your own classifiers to identify that as well. And to do this, you can use all kinds of methods, such as providing templates and simple document samples, or dictionaries and terms and regular expressions to really describe what you're looking for, and combine all of that with functions that are built in and proximity detectors to really construct indicators that match your environment and your needs. And as soon as you do this, the system will automatically start telling you, assuming you have the right permissions, where that data exists. And it's a very quick and powerful way to help you be informed about what is out there in your environment and how big that problem is. And we've had examples of clients that we've worked with where we've run just a simple scan looking for sensitive data that they know they have, and they found it in unusual places, like squirreled away in somebody's OneDrive that shouldn't be there against company policy. So it's a very quick way of trying to understand the nature of your environment. Now, those classifiers are only one way to classify information. The next one is to use information protection sensitivity labels. Now, these are visual indicators that are designed to match up with your corporate or organizational classification policy. So think confidential, sensitive, internal only, that kind of thing. Maybe things that we would have stamped on paper copies of documents once upon a time. You can create labels to implement those classifications. And the labels are applied to documents, and then those labels perform several functions. So first of all, they're an indicator to people that this is a confidential document, for example. And staff members should understand what that means from a policy perspective, how to treat a confidential document, and so forth. Second, the system itself, Microsoft 365, can see that label, and it also understands what to do with that item, and we'll come to that shortly. We can also expand this to add extra indicators, so we can add footers, headers, big splashy watermarks as additional flags for users to make sure they understand what it is. And then finally, in this area, probably the best feature, we can encrypt files. Just by the simple mechanism of applying a label, you can encrypt a file and keep it more safe. And this applies to emails as well as files. Now, the encryption can be pre-configured to, say, a group, or maybe the whole organization, or specific individuals if needed. And it can also be performed on the fly. You can choose who should see the documents. And these encryption style labels can enforce no access, read access, edit access, no copying, no printing, a whole bunch of different features. One common one we see, as I mentioned, is like internal only, just for the organization. So if you imagine you create a label that is applied that restricts access to your people. So any file that has this label is perfectly usable by your users. There's no difference in the experience. They can edit and save files and so on as normal. But if that file is shared outside of the organization, or if it's stolen, or if it's taken by someone who's leaving the company, that file will be unreadable. It's encrypted just to your authenticated users. Now, this is a very simple but hugely effective treatment. You can create this simple label that protects the files, make sure only your people can see it, which can have a huge impact on your risk in terms of losing information and leaking files and a breach. So that brings me kind of neatly onto the second tool. Data loss prevention, DLP. These tools have been around for a long time, and the DLP tool inside Purview has a ton of flexibility. And we can only really scratch the surface here in this session. But essentially, it can track the flow of data, and it can report on that data, and it can provide alerts for IT and the security team. It can nudge users with tips, and if needed, it can automatically block or redirect traffic. And it's a really flexible and powerful tool. And I'll illustrate with a simple example again. Let's take our internal-only type documents. Let's say I try and share a document with an internal label to someone externally. Maybe I send it to a Gmail account or something like that. DLP would hopefully have a rule that would be fairly obvious to set up, that if this document is restricted to staff only, then don't let it leave. It should be useless to anybody else, so just don't let it leave. So it might block the email, and it might provide a message for the user to say, hey, you can't send this information outside the company. Now, DLP can use other things other than labels. There's a lot of flexibility within the tool, so we can use sensitive data classifiers that we just talked about before. So if it detects health card numbers or financial information, that's leaving the organization and it's not coming from finance, it might say, okay, yeah, this group of people shouldn't be sending that information, so I'm going to block that, or I'm going to flag it, or I'm going to alert somebody, whatever you decide. It can also use properties of emails and files, such as a source or maybe a destination email, something like that. But one of the really neat features about DLP is the communication aspect. You can tell people, hey, you tried to do something and we don't think that's the right thing to do. And we've either blocked it or we think you should think about what you're doing, and we're not going to block it, but we're warning somebody. Maybe you're trying to share something sensitive. So this might prevent a leak, but it also might prompt a conversation to tweak the rules to say, well, actually, I need to share this information. I do it at the end of every month, say. So maybe it's legitimate use. And one of the key things about these rules is that you should expect to refine things over time. But again, we'll kind of touch on that in a short while. I'm going to quickly touch on insider risk management, IRM. Again, this can be very effective if configured correctly. IRM will look at the millions of signals that are going on day to day in general use of the system. If you think about all of the hundreds or thousands of users and the millions of documents that exist in your environment and all of the communications and the sharing that goes on, what IRM can do is look at all of those signals and it will flag what it sees as unusual or risky behavior. And then this can lead on to impacting other tools such as DLP, so that the impact of that might be different because of the risk profile of the user. Now, tools like this, they use artificial intelligence, and they're not going to be perfect. And I wouldn't expect that from any IT tool. But what it does give you is that extra set of eyes on this huge amount of data to flag something that you might miss day to day. You can't possibly, as a person, monitor all these users. So it gives you that extra little bit of input into the systems and what's going on. And then you can also feed into IRM. So if somebody resigns, you can actually tell IRM, and it will change the risk profile of the person who's leaving the organization. So this, again, along with DLP, can be a really powerful tool to help you take control of what's going on without impacting the users into too much of a negative fashion. Now, I skimmed over IRM pretty quickly because I want to fit something into the time we have available, which I feel is a crucial part of the security model, but it often gets missed. However, I'm an information management specialist, so for me, it's a really important topic to cover, and that is data lifecycle management and records. So managing the proliferation of content, all of those copies that are going around everywhere, and all of the versions and all of the life cycle of that document from its initial creation all the way through its usage to the end of its life. So the proper retention and disposition, all of that is really important. It's not hard to find instances of investigations or breaches where data that could and probably should have been disposed of has magnified the problem that an organization's had. So Purview actually has a full retention and disposition product built into it that allows you to manage the content lifecycle. And this can ensure the records that need to be protected are retained and uneditable and undeletable. And that might be for regulatory reasons or internal policy decisions or just to protect your own IPA, but also helps dispose of the old content. Getting rid of all of that unusable and unwanted data. Doing this not only fulfills some of your compliance requirements, but also makes your organization more efficient. You're not trying to find that latest copy of a file out of the 20 versions available in 5 different sources. And it reduces the potential loss of data if the worst happens. So one of the important things, if you want to improve your security posture and you don't already do lifecycle management, you should definitely look into this tool because it's all part of Purview. And retention type labels can also be used in other tools like DLP as well. So it's all connected within the system and all magnifies the benefits of each of the other tools. So before my final point, I'm going to revisit a very popular topic at the moment, Copilot. It's very hot. It gets mentioned in every presentation, so ours can't be any different. But Microsoft have built Copilot into Purview in multiple directions, in two directions, if you like. In the case of Copilot for Microsoft 365, from a user perspective, Copilot will respect the environment that it's in. It will respect the permissions and the access controls. So if you're trying to pull together a document that uses other documents, if you don't have access to those, you just won't get those results. But it will also respect labels that have been applied to content. So if you're pulling together a document that has got a sensitivity label applied, well, if you're pulling together a document that uses content from other documents that have got sensitivity labels applied, the new document will also inherit that label. So it's auto-protecting the actual content of the file, not just the file itself. Also, as I said, results won't be shown if you don't have access. On the flip side, Purview can be used to monitor Copilot usage. All the Copilot activities are available in the audit log, which is part of the Purview suite. There is a communication compliance policy available, and that's another tool similar to IRM that we haven't got time to go into at the moment. But again, it can monitor the communications, including those to Copilot. And you can configure DLP to do things like prevent upload of sensitive data to other AI platforms. So if you've decided Copilot is our platform of choice and you shouldn't be using other platforms on the internet, you can control that. And also we can use data lifecycle management, which I just talked about. You can actually use that to retain Copilot chat as well. So if you need evidence of things that have happened, you can actually use that tool. And then finally, there's an AI hub that provides insights into what's going on in the environment regarding Copilot. And the integration is growing almost daily as things become more close together. There are also links between Copilot for security into Purview tools, such as DLP. So if you're doing a security investigation and you see some of the alerts coming through, there are links through to the DLP tools and other tools straight from Copilot for security. So you can see how the Purview toolset is very useful in so many ways, and it's such a broad set of tools, and we haven't touched on all of them. But it does bring me to my final point for today. We've touched on a lot of things in Purview, and each topic could have been a session all on its own. And hopefully we've illustrated how great these tools can be. But my soapbox moment to wrap up, the key to making this work is information governance. If you want to improve your organization's security position and implement some of these tools, you absolutely need to start with a governance model. And business groups must be engaged in the decision making. So running through some of the things we discussed, your sensitive data, you need to understand what is sensitive in your organization. So we have those tools that can detect the data, but how do you know if it's a valid hit, if it's a false positive? You need to talk to the organization to find out, okay, what do you have that's sensitive, and are these good examples? Is it actually identifying what you have in the correct manner? So involving the business there really will help make it more accurate. Labels, you have to start with a classification policy, a policy with a big P. Something that your users understand, why it's important to classify information, what the potential impacts are. Then you can implement that policy through labels. If you think about DLP, understanding the flow of data, what might be valid for one group might not be valid for another. To protect the organization while not drowning in IT alerts that need triaging is really important. And when we deliver these tools to our clients, we always try and think about these three zones. There's the content that, okay, that's fine, that can go through, we don't worry about that too much. And we have the content at the other end that's, no, absolutely, we should block that, there's no reason for that to be moving. And then in the middle, we have the area that needs to be triaged. And what we want to do is make that as narrow as possible by talking to the business, understanding the flow, and refining those rules over time to really make the tools impactful, but not a drag on everyday resources. The same with insider risk management. And then finally, lifecycle management. I talked about the importance of that. It's something that doesn't often get thought about, but you can't achieve that without a proper schedule for your retention and disposition. It doesn't have to be complex, but it does have to fit your business needs. And it's very easy to put something together that will just clean up some of the old data. And then finally, AI, if you're using AI, the content you retain, where you put it, how you secure it, the use of encryption will absolutely impact your results. So you can see how Purview affects so much in what your organization does, but in some very simple ways can have a really big impact and reduce your risk and enhance your security posture. Over time, it will get better and better. So hopefully that gave you some great ideas and some food for thought. I'm going to hand you back to Chris now. Thank you.
So thank you, Sean, for your in the field experience. And just to summarize and make a note here for the audience, right? Road mapping your journey is going to be a critical part to your start. Ensuring you have an assessment and planning activity done to identify and define those requirements. When you have the license in place, make sure you deploy your Purview solution set, create labels, start to implement your policies from your labels and DLP aspect, apply those labels, and as Sean was mentioning, take advantage of the automation to automate those labels based on classification rules, and then look to enforce the data loss prevention rules, activate the protection policies, monitor and continue to fine-tune those rules. Next, implement the retention. Consider your e-discovery, your search, your collecting of relevant data, and then bring it down to your user education level. Awareness and training is always key. Promote and encourage your employees to have positive interactions when it comes to protecting your data. And then lastly, continuously monitor and audit the effectiveness of your data. And if needed, seek third-party assistance for any validation to ensure that your journey towards a stronger data security posture is in a healthy balance. So key takeaways before I get into our takeaway here is around know your data, learn about the tools that are available, seek experts for assistance, and then of course have the takeaway action to future-proof your organization from data leakage and cyber breaches. So then next steps from a Bulletproof perspective. So Bulletproof, we are fast track enabled ESIF ready partner. And we have the opportunity to be able to provide to our eligible Microsoft customers a free data security engagement workshop based on eligibility to be able to provide you a walkthrough and a proof of concept around getting your data security posture with the information protection, labeling, classification components put in place. So please feel free to reach out to our group or use the QR code to see your eligibility status and book your conversations with our team at your earliest convenience. And then lastly, we'll ask you to stick around for the next 10 to 15 minutes as we'll open the floor for our live Q&A sessions where we'll be able to answer any of the outstanding questions that are within the audience members today. Thank you and have a good day, everybody.